This is our last episode about Dune, where we recap the whole Hexalogy and we talk about our top best, top worst, top 10 tips, how to pick up women by Duncan Idaho, and all that kind of stuff. So obviously, spoilers galore. If you haven't read the series and if you don't want to be spoiled, be warned. Welcome to the final Dune episode of the Mind Hack Books podcast. Today we're talking about the Hexalogy of Dune, the 6 books by Frank Herbert, which all combined is 3,484 pages, and it spanned over 20 years, plus 6 years of research and preparation before the first book even came out. So a huge series, one of the most famous sci-fi series ever. And as we usually do on the show, we like to go over a few lists. Top best, top worst. So one more time, thank you for joining me, Paolo, for Dune discussions.
Thank you.
Are you feeling Dune exhausted or Dune excited?
Not at all. I'm happy. I waited so long to talk about Dune at length. I just regret we couldn't do this when I had just finished reading too.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't have enjoyed it then if I read it all at once. So I had to give it time.
No. Yeah, that's fair. I followed my strategy where I was reading one book and then I was reading a different book and then I was reading another Dune book and then kind of alternating it with different books. But I finished reading the 6th book over 2 years ago.
I read the last 2 back to back and I think I should have taken a break before the very last one because like we discussed in our previous episode, it felt a little bit tiring at parts.
Yeah.
All the characters were tired. You hit the nail on the head right there. The writer was tired. We were tired. The characters were tired. But today I'm super excited. I love these episodes. I don't know if the listeners like it, but I love it. I like to look at the whole series and remember some of the best and worst moments and things and ideas. So we have covered all 6 books from episode 50 and 51 to episode 64, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you found us just now, please start with episode 50, which is the reason why we even got interested in Dune, and then per episode each book. And today we have some lists that we like to go over quickly. Not a long discussion, more like a highlight, and have one last laugh about Duncan Idaho. So, so the lists we're going to discuss are order the books, then top, best, and worst. Paolo wrote, we must do random nonsense list. So that's gonna be a thing.
Of course.
There has to be our favorite quotes. We both wrote too many of them, so it should be just the top 3 quotes. So we'll see how that goes. And then finally, Duncan being a hunky boy, tips how to pick up women by Duncan Idaho, the best list. That's not the easiest list to put together.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm super excited to see what you put on your list. I have no idea.
I hope we don't have too much of the same things.
I am fairly confident that we will not have much overlap, but we'll see.
Okay.
So before we start with the list, I have just one question I was thinking about, and I already asked throughout the other episodes, and that's, is this the best sci-fi series that we have read on this show or in your life? And if you had to say, what do you think?
I mean, probably so, yes.
I have to say yes as well.
What I want to say before confirming that is, in terms of just books, I usually don't really read sci-fi much. Yes, it is the best sci-fi series I've ever read. I also think it doesn't say much because I haven't read that many. But I think it's better than Three Body Problem.
I read almost exclusively sci-fi, and I would agree. The only other sci-fi series, is the Ender Saga that I love wholeheartedly and people have so many problems with. And enjoyment-wise, I still like it more because it somehow still holds my attention even after 40 books. I still enjoy it, and it's like a very comforting, character-driven, clever sci-fi that I can always read. Or even the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I can always read that. I've already read that a few times, like the whole series. It's always funny to me, it's always great, but this series feels very special in the way that no other series of books I've ever read, in the way that each book is so different, each has memorable parts, there are so many things to think about, there are so many things that stay with you. So based on that, I would have to say it's probably the best series of books in general I've read so far.
Oh, okay, wow.
I was thinking about it, and I can't find something that would be so consistent, because usually the books are good partially, or there's always something to hate. This one, I don't have anything to hate really. There's random stuff that doesn't make sense, but I don't mind it, and there is never something I was really put off by.
That's true. Yeah, if I think about series, no, I agree. I do think that there's either a drop in certain books. For example, like Stormlight Archives, I always say how much I like it, and I think it's amazing. But for example, a fourth book is a huge drop, so it's going to be 10 books. I don't expect like every book to be at the same level as the best ones, and I don't think Dune every book is at the same level. I think we discussed about this before, but
yeah.
I do think that you always finish a Dune book with the feeling, oh wow, I've read the Dune book, if that makes sense.
It feels like that, yes.
And but it does that without being repetitive. It always feels new, it always feels of value. Dune does this really well.
Yeah, I agree. So I have to say that probably the best series.
It's like JoJo.
There are things I don't like.
I don't think it's the best series. I mean, I don't know if you want to consider like the whole Tolkien fantasy world as a saga. It's not really conceived as a normal saga. Like, it's not a series of books. It's just...
You say that, but I still see it as a series.
Yeah, if you want to consider it as a series, then I think that will forever be my favorite. I think I'm too attached to it to replace it with anything. If you take that aside, it could be. Like, Dune could be... We'll see what happens again with Stormlight Archives and a few of the other courses.
We'll get back to you on episode 200 when we read more stuff.
We'll see.
Yeah. So please let us know in the comments if you have any recommendation for what you think is the best series, be it sci-fi, fantasy, or any other.
Yeah.
So needless to say, we wholeheartedly recommend this. We've talked about this enough, and I just wanted to one last time say we like this because of the series, not because of the first book, which is usually what people think.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not talk about... I wanted to repeat myself again. So let's get into the lists. First list will be super quick and super easy, and probably one of the only ones that will be the same for both of us. So let's go through all 6 books and rate them from the least we like it to the most we like it.
Okay.
So I'll start. The 6th, the last one I like the least, is Chapter House Dune.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a surprise.
Same.
Yeah,
I mean, so not to spoil the next one, but the next one, like the 5th for me, is the 5th book.
Same for me. Yeah, this is very obvious.
I think like the 5th and the 6th are at the same level. If you want to switch 5 and 6, I'm okay with it. I think the 5th one is a more interesting perspective, just in showing a lot of different factions and kind of a new universe.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. So that was the easy list. So Chapter House Dune is 6th.
Heretics of Dune
is 5th. So my 4th least favorite is Children of Dune.
For me, number 4 was God Emperor.
Oh. What?
I went with like number 4, number 5, and number 6. Yeah, that's...
Are you serious? Yeah. That's a big upset.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. For me, 4th least favorite Children of Dune was the first time there was something that put me off, like the tigers and the worm suit and all those things. I was like, where is this?
I put God Emperor just because the central part is just felt like completely unneeded. There are so many scenes where like they're interesting if you take them by themselves, but if you read throughout the whole book, you're always feeling like there's stuff that is added to the book that like it doesn't really need to be there. God Emperor could have been the best if it was like 300 pages.
Okay.
250 pages. And the other thing is I just really didn't like Shiona. Like I just didn't like her at all.
Yeah. Yes, I didn't like her either.
So,
it reminded me of hating on the main character of the Broken Earth trilogy.
I don't want to remember.
Paulo is being triggered,
yeah.
So let's not talk about it. So 3rd least favorite for me is the first one, Dune 1.
Okay, for me is Dune Messiah. I was a little bit... I wasn't sure which one I wanted to put number 3. I put Dune Messiah instead of the first Dune because I think so many things were just too symbolic and just like, what do you want to tell me? I'm stupid, I don't really understand. And it felt like some subplots you really had to focus and try to build the connections in your mind. Otherwise, it just felt like a string of events that were not really connected to each other. I think it's a really, really good book. I mean, these all are, but if it could have been a bit more explicit and a bit more organized, it would have been better.
Okay. For me, the third best being the first one is because I had a hard time reading it, like I talked about, and the last part with all the battles, and also the middle part when you said you didn't like that either. The part when Paul is living with the Fremen and he's like training and all this stuff, and also the beginning when they are spending all this time at the palace, nothing's really happening. But there are a lot of like kind of not dull but kind of slow moments, and I really like the build up for it does the heavy lifting for the other books, but as the book itself, if I read only that one, I would never have said that this is the best series ever. Like, I would not be as amazed.
I put it in second place because of what you said. Like, there are some, like, especially in the final part, I think it just skips here and there, and it feels like the last steps of the process for Paul to become the Kwisatz Haderach are kind of rushed. I still think, like, in terms of just as a read, as a book, this is probably the best one.
Oh yeah, I think it's the best constructed.
It's the best constructed, and I think it fulfills the, forget about the content itself, just in terms of the structure of the book, I think is the one that feels like the most normal one in a good way.
Yes.
What you said is true, and I think it's a merit for the first book. So it sets up so many things that will be explored into the following books, and it does it really well. Even if you read just the first book, for example, things like Fremen culture or the political structure of this universe, or even just the characters, they're all extremely interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
So you want to know more about that, you want to know more about this planet, you want to know more about these characters. I think that's what I wouldn't say about, like, for example, book 4, where some of the characters are pretty boring. It doesn't say much about the overall structure of the world. Like, if you just read book 4, you don't really have like that much of an incentive to read the other books. So I think that's a huge merit for the first book, and that's why I put it number 2.
Objectively, it should be number 1. I think it's the best written. I think it's got the best like setup and everything. But personally, it's number 3 for me. Number 2 for me is Dune Messiah. I love the length is half of the other books, and it does so much. And basically everything you said you didn't like about it is the reason I like it.
Okay.
I like the symbolism of it. I like the ambiguity of the things. I like that you have to think to put the things together, and when you do put them together, it works. And it's got the best BMF villain, and it's got all the clever plotting, and it's got one of the best endings in any book I remember.
I on that I completely agree. It has the best ending in this book, and possibly one of the best endings I've ever read in any book.
I love it so much. And it felt somehow so personal, even though it was like a galactic scale and completely unrelated, like to my life. It was completely unrelated, but it still felt very relatable and personal, even though this crazy stuff was going on. I don't know how that was accomplished. So just for that,
I agree. No, that's 100% true. Yeah, I just got tired about hearing about the falling of a blue moon 100 times and not really understanding what it was supposed to to me.
Somehow it worked for me. I know what you mean. So huge surprise for number 1 for me, for your list, and no surprise on my list. So why did you pick Children of Dune?
So I put she's the only one I gave 5 stars on Goodreads.
Yeah.
So I put Children of Dune because if you want to say which book has the lowest points, I think possibly Children of Dune has the lowest points. Like, there are a few things that really confusing, and while I was reading and even later and even reading like summaries, it was just like, what is really happening here? And it's not because it's symbolic like in the second book. I think it's just not written very well, and I don't think the ending is as clean and as well written as the ending of the first or the second book. So in that sense, it's not as good. The reason why I put it first is, first, I think it has, so if you talk about like what I personally like the most about Dune and what I got the most out of Dune in my life, I think you can see the most here, because this has the completion, of course, of Paul's story, in a way also the completion of like the Fremen arc, and really it completes like that overhaul of the universe that started in the first book. And I think that's like what is the most interesting about Dune to me. So that's 1. 2 is the way he handles these characters. I am usually, not usually, but very often I am much more biased towards like stories with good characters or good character arcs, something that I can like. I think the way he handles the story of most of the characters here, most of the main characters that now you have known for 3 books. So, you know, Duncan and Poe and Alia and Stilgar. It's so good and it's so tragic. I think it's just great. Characters coming to terms with all of this stuff that has happened, and there's no good solution. There's no happy ending.
Definitely your kind of vibe.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think even if you look at the ending and how it's a little bit sped up, and again, it's not as clean as the other ones, I think it's the most, this sounds really strange, but it's the most realistic one. These characters don't have an easy out. None of them does. Like, they either die, they have to take some terrible decisions, and for the whole universe, this is not like an exciting first step, like at the end of the first book. And it's not like bittersweet ending like the second one, where Paul sacrifices himself, but he has saved his children, and now there's like future for the Empire. And this is just very, very pragmatic.
I see. You talk about it, makes lots of sense. I can absolutely see why this is your favorite, and finally explain. You finally get your answer from episode whichever we talked about it, and you're like, why did I have this at not 5 stars? So finally understand it. So my best is God Emperor of Dune, for all the reasons you said you didn't like it for. I love it so much. There's everything. There's nothing I dislike about it. The part in the middle or whatever you said that's too long and it could have been shortened. No, make it 2,000 pages long.
Yes, okay, I agree. But if this was like a different book, right? Like a book just about like Leto thinking about things and there's no plot. It's just him doing stuff. Like Leto's everyday life. Like you make like a TV show where it's like
I would literally
every episode is a day in the life of Leto. That'd be great.
I would literally listen to a like 1,000 episode podcast by Leto God Emperor.
With Malky making an appearance sometimes.
Just with Malky and Leto having a podcast for like years and years. It'll be amazing. Everything he says somehow comes off as a spiteful teenager, like a idiot in a god's body who's actually like wise about it, and somehow it all makes sense, and he never says anything that's boring. And then he always tells everybody they're wrong, and it's somehow funny. I think it's genius. This is gonna be one of my favorite books always. This hit all the niche things I like and put off all the people I don't like. So
no aliens though.
It's so weird. It's an alien probably. Like the way they describe Leto and his body anatomy and how he thinks and all the stuff he does, it's basically an alien.
Fair.
Or if it isn't, it hits all the things I like about aliens. So basically. So I've talked about it too much, so let's move on. Very surprised about the Children of Dune, but you just justified it, so not so surprised.
Thank you.
So this list should have been the shortest. We already talked so long, but so let's move on. Do you want to do first or best next?
Let's do best first.
Okay. So this was the hardest list for me to put together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was trying to decide if I'm picking like moments, characters, or like very specific things, or if I'm picking general stuff.
Okay.
So then I did kind of both. So hopefully it's gonna work out somehow. So maybe you can start, because I'm curious what kind of approach you did.
Well, I tried to go for something that is more overarching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
So my number 5 was this kind of contradicts what I just said, but it's Leto turns into a worm. So what I mean by this is as a choice. So usually in many fantasy stories or sci-fi stories or like stories in general, authors tend to really like their heroes and their main characters, and they always try to shine good light on them. In this case, not only Frank Herbert is merciless when it comes to any character, but in this case he just turns Leto into a monster. Like the fact that he decided to do this to his main character, like it's just amazing. So
yep, I agree.
That's what I put at number 5.
Definitely. Also on my list, something similar. My number 5 will surprise you. It's Duncan Idaho.
Really? Okay.
We love to hate him. We love to tell him that he's stupid. He's the perfect point of view of the reader. He goes through one of the wildest character arcs in fiction imaginable. He's always idiotic. He's always funny. He's the hunkiest of the hunky boys. And he goes from like an idiot who dies and is completely forgotten in the first book to a Zensune Gohola philosopher with all the super skills. Like he's connecting to the Matrix or some shit. What is happening? And I genuinely feel like that it's a good character because it's the only character who goes through all the books, and each book is different. and in each book he plays a role, and he plays so many important points of view, like especially like the fourth book I was talking about is how the apocalypse has to be seen by somebody who's normal, or in the second book it's like a huge shock that he's resurrected and how to even deal with that, and then in the fifth and sixth book, that's probably my favorite parts in the fifth book, how they resurrect him and how he gets back all the memories and what kind of point of view that is, and then there is all this imprinting and how he has sex with Murbella and all this, and
even you fell to the charm of the hunky.
Even I am charmed by Duncan Idaho. Oh my god.
It's surprising but agreeable. Okay, my number 4 is the Fremen's descent into nothingness.
Yeah.
Of course, they were being murdered and forced to live in the desert, and people hated them, but they had like this long-term plan, and they have been working as a society and as a culture to achieve it, and it was in a way beautiful. They were a terrible society, like they were super violent and crazy, but you know, this dream that they had of building like a better planet for their long distant descendants was really beautiful, and they were going at their own pace, and they really didn't need anything or anyone. And then, you know, Paul comes, warps their whole culture, makes them fight in a nonsensical war just so that he could be the emperor. Tons of them die, and then they're already starting to lose what made them unique, and like it's kind of humiliating how what they were trying to achieve and that would have taken hundreds of years, it's being achieved in decades just because now Paul has much stronger resources. And then, you know, in the fourth book they become the museum Fremen.
Yeah.
It's a little bit funny in the book, but it's actually really sad.
Yeah.
And in the fifth and sixth book they don't even exist.
They sort of exist in the villages, like when Shiana is from and stuff. But yeah, I absolutely agree, and this is a great, amazing point and progression, and I didn't put it on this list because it's too depressing for me to think about it. But absolutely, I understand why you picked it.
Just wait for the other points.
Yeah, exactly. This is like how to be depressed by Paolo Atreides. So my number 4 is engineering religion and setting up a messiah artificially and all that. We never really talked about it so much in our episodes, but it's kind of obvious the more you read the books. Yeah, this is like a cheat point on my list. I love the Bene Gesserit plotting, and the biggest plot they have constructed is of course the religion and Lisan al-Gaib and how that's all artificial, and I somehow feel like this is all based on reality and real history because religions are great at controlling people. So I always get into all these arguments with people who are religious, and as somebody who is from one of the most atheistic countries, we always have these arguments about religion, and I don't think religion is bad. I think religion is one of the reasons we don't kill each other as much. Like the way to have society, to have some kind of ideal to look up to, or some kind of moral compass to decide what's okay and what's horrible. Religion serves really well, and the way it's used in these stories and how the Bene Gesserit constructed for their own gains is super clever and probably happens all the time without us seeing it. So that's why it's my point 4.
No, 100%.
Yeah, very abstract.
I don't know, 100%. I think that's great. It is one of the best points. And also what Leto does in the fourth book in terms of building the religion.
That's such a strong thing that's repeating in different ways throughout the whole series, and they even took it as the main theme of the recent movie.
Yeah.
They went really hard on that, and they never played that hard in the books, but you still think about it a lot.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, my number 3. What do you think? Is it going to be a positive one or a sad one?
Who died? Who's depressed? It's gonna be like Paul is depressed and he cannot see, but and he still decides to kill himself in the desert. No,
I think that's a great, like, I kind of regret not putting the ending of the second book on my list. I probably should have. It's just amazing. No, but my second one is Alia's and Paul's death.
Oh my god.
It's not just how they die itself, like the whole trajectory their lives take to reach that point.
Yeah.
And just also in a way with what you mentioned, and how religion can turn people into complete, not just monsters, but blind monsters, where they worship Paul, what they think Paul stands for so much that they don't even realize that the guy they're killing is Paul.
Yeah, that's insane.
I think that's just so powerful.
Okay, so that's exactly why you picked third book as the best one.
Third book. Yeah, when they kill Paul as the preacher. And Alia's death is similar, right? So from the first book, you have Alia being kind of a psycho, and her getting controlled by the Baron and finding out that her only way out and ending like her own psychosis is to jump out of the window. It's really tragic, but I don't want to go too much into what we talked about in the third book, but I really, really like that. I think it's something that we usually don't see in stories. And it's really tough. Like, we don't want to think about this. The fact that he just throws it in your face, I think is great.
Yeah, the more you talk about it, the more it grows on me, the third book. I think one of the reasons I didn't like it is exactly what you just said. I don't like to think about it too much. It's way too depressing.
That's fair.
And makes much more sense why you picked it as, you didn't know during our episode about it, but it's super clear now.
Yeah, I had to remember.
So my third is basically your fifth, but in a little bit of a different point of view. It's the depiction of a god who's a bored, spiteful teenager, and he tells everybody they're wrong, and it's so clever how that's put together. So I think I've talked about it enough. It's just all the witty comments and the way he thinks and the way he plans stuff and the way everything happens exactly as he plans. And I can read that book anytime. I feel like it's so amusing.
I would say this. I wouldn't reread it, but it's one of those books where you can just open it at a random chapter and just read only that random chapter and appreciate it, because especially if it's in the middle, it doesn't really matter what point of the story it was. You can just read and appreciate what is being said and what is happening.
This has to be the most intelligent depiction of any supernatural godlike being ever in any fiction, because it's always focusing on only one aspect of it. Like if you think about recently the Boys or like the Invincible TV show, like there is like the Superman, super being, and this is what it actually would mean, if it was a godlike person. And they really hone down, like they focus on like one aspect of it. And then if you look at like The Watchmen, which we never really talked about, I still feel like it's very simplistic, like the whole character of Dr. Manhattan and all he does and all that comes together, super clever, but it's not really explored much in depth, and it's also kind of one kind of angle on it. So I really like here the character is just from all sides, and he's vulnerable and he's funny and he's sad and he's all these things together, and that makes the most sense for a god.
Okay, next episode we'll talk about Watchmen. My number 2 is very similar to your number 4. Yeah, your number 4. So what I called it is like philosophical considerations on religion and state. I think it's similar to what you said. So in general, not just how religion is, not just what happens relating to the story, but what we talked about that we always like is, and this is especially present in book 4, but I think it, like, for example, book 6 has this really well. It's just people talking, sometimes randomly, talking about religion and just spouting wisdom regarding religion or regarding state and power. And that's why we like Dune quotes so much, right?
Yeah.
Like, there are all of these things that just tell you something that it sounds so true. I could never be bothered to actually read an actual philosophy book other than like my textbooks. But probably if they included giant worms and lasguns, this is how they would sound like. So really like.
Yeah, I agree. So my number 2 is like a cop-out. It's like a bunch of things packed in one. So to be very specific at first, it's the moment when Scytale completely crushes Paul at the end of the second book with all his planning. It's like one of my favorite things in any story. It's so evil, and how to overcome a messiah, like a omnipresent, omnipotent person who sees the future with all the planning. And there's literally nothing Paul can do about it. I think it's genius and the most evil plan. I talked about so much in our episode about it. But also it wraps up the story so well, so that's kind of like the cop-out. I really like that ending. Like, I really agreed with you how you said it's one of the best endings, and I really like the sentiment of Dune Messiah being a contrast to the first book, and how the whole book is so bad for Paul, and how you realize so many things about what it would mean to actually become that kind of person, and then the ending is even so much worse and so much more impactful, and you don't even expect it because everything has already kind of been destroyed for Paul, but it still gets so much deeper. So I really like the endings, and this is cop-out number 3 of this point. I like all the endings of all these books because I think the series has the strongest endings of all book series I've ever read, because it always feels very satisfying, very impactful, and very meaningful meaningful. All the endings except maybe 6.
I would say 6 can be impactful ending. It's just, again, because we literally don't know where it goes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
But otherwise, love the ending. So all of these, like, this is my cop-out because I don't know how to
Agreed.
put all these things on this list.
Okay, now my number 1. This is also very much of a cop-out. I called it moral ambiguity.
Okay.
So what I mean by this is specifically when you talk about Paul, but also if you want when you talk about Leto, and you can extend this also to the Bene Gesserit or Duncan Idaho. But while in the book there are some people, some characters, and even some factions which are quite clearly evil, the Harkonnens. Not only you can't really say, well, the Harkonnens are evil, so the Atreides are good, because they're not, clearly, but it's really, really hard to define morality. Like, it's always challenged in a way that I think I've very, very rarely seen in any fiction. Like, it makes me think of, you made fun of this when we were talking about The Way of Kings, where, like, you have to protect everyone, but then Kaladin just kills a lot of people in the battle, and then you say it's like, in those video games where you're supposed to be the hero, but then you can, like, when it's outside of the scenes, you can, like, do whatever you want.
Yeah, the technical term is ludonarrative dissonance.
Right. So I think that's completely absent here. And what I mean is, earlier I talked about impossible choices, right? You can never tell, like, which one was the right choice for Paul or for Leto. And you can never tell, like, which one was the morally acceptable choice. And one of my very, very favorite scenes is in the first book. It's when Paul awakens his mentat powers, and he realizes that what he's doing will cause the jihad, and he wants to stop it because he understands, like, it's awful, but he also understands that he can't, and he also understands that he can only control it in a way so that it's not, like, completely out of control, but also that achieves his goal, which is destroying the Harkonnen, which, are evil. Not just, like, people like to say, it's kind of like morally ambiguous in the same, like, in something like, some Marvel stories where it's like, should they kill the bad guy or should they not? I don't think that's uninteresting. I think it's just, like, explored over and over and over again. But I think situations like this, they're never really built this well, where it's like, you really can't tell, like, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys, and like, what is the, like, if you were in that situation with your moral beliefs, what would you do? And there's never a right choice. The only story I can think of that's something really similar is Attack on Titans, which is something I like. For people who like Attack on Titans, I would definitely recommend reading Dune, and vice versa. I think there are some really big similarities that can make appreciate the other story more. I think this is just amazing. It's something that it's incredibly hard to build in a way that is satisfying and in a way that is, like, intellectually acceptable. Like, it's not just something that it's there, like, it's a tough choice because the author is telling you that it's a tough choice, or that it's a tough choice just by the moral compass of the character. It's just something that as a human you can never find a solution to.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, that's definitely a huge strength of this series, and you always feel like you know a little bit which way you would lean and what you would decide and what is a little bit less morally awful, and then it flips on the other side. You're like, oh no, that's so bad. Absolutely agree. So my point number 1 is very simple. You are literally forced to think.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true.
Because there is no easy way out of any of this. Like, I guess it's kind of the same like you just talked about. If you just go along with it, there is literally, like, a point where you're like, this is not okay. Like, you're like rooting for this person or doing that, and you're like, we're bombarded in the face with stuff to think about, and you cannot escape it. And I think I always talk about how the sci-fi is in the thinking. So one of my favorite moments, or like the moments, just like concepts ever from this whole series will be, and something I will always carry with me as I go about my daily life, is just thinking about how people think and how you can understand people's thought processes and their body language, as they show everywhere in this book. Like, they make it a big point in the first book, and then it kind of is never mentioned again, but it's always there. Like, we always say that the conversations, like the negotiations and the tense conversations between two parties, are like the best things we look forward to.
Yeah.
Like, they always have this exchange, and there's always two powerful people, and they always have all these, like, ways to read the other person or to one up each other.
Yeah, it's like the first chapter of Dune Messiah, where, like, your favorite guy, Skytail, is just running circles around Irulan and Edric and the other people in the conspiracy.
Yeah. So this is something that somehow changes you even though you don't know, or somehow teaches you how to think even if you don't want to.
Yeah.
That's my all-time favorite point. Like, I can kind of see after I've been reading all of these books, you kind of look at things differently, and I don't think I've ever experienced a book to this extent. Like, of course there are things that change you and they make you think about stuff, but it's not to that extent. It's like so powerfully mind-changing. I don't know how to even say this. Like, it makes you look at people different.
Agreed.
So that's my number one.
Okay, you're so tired, and we're talking about the good points. Now we need to talk about the bad points.
No, I was just like, oh, and now let's talk about this shit. I was
Okay.
just like, by the side. I was like, oh, and now the next
for the
list.
bad points, I think we can be very quick. Like, many of my bad points are very, very short.
Okay. So number 5.
My number 5. So I guess this is like 5th list. So it's the best of the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Something I always mention is Paul's first child. I just can't get past this. It's just so annoying. It just happened, and then, I mean, I guess you can say this
Even after book 5, where they were like, "You don't talk about that.
Right.
You shouldn't talk about that."
I mean, you can use this as an excuse about several other points where they're mentioned and then just abandoned, and it's just like they disappeared into nothingness. Like, why did the Harkonnen leave Gamu? Where did they go? What happened?
Yeah, that's also
who killed what's her name, Shangyu, like on Gamu, or like
yeah.
all of these things kind of like symbolized by Paul's first child being killed. He gets killed. Then disappears. No one cares.
Okay. So my number 5 is Leto running at the speed of worm. I like that he puts the worm suit. I like the concept of the worm suit. I like him being the worm. I like all of it. I like the idea very much. But why did he have to become a superhero? And why did the sieges have to explode while he was running like a maniac? I don't get it.
Fair enough.
Too much.
Number 4, I will not repeat what I said last time, but the Jews, because it just felt completely out of place. It was so random and just like, why is this Hyperion now? Like, why are we doing this?
Space Jews.
Let's just skip this.
This I put this on the like what the hell list. If that list didn't exist, it would be here too for me.
Yeah.
So number 4 for me is the tigers and the plan to kill with the tigers.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Unnecessarily overconvoluted, but still fun.
Number 3 for me was off-screening. We talked about like things that happen off-screen, especially in the 5th and 6th book.
Oh, okay.
Where it's like all the battles.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, this could have been fun, or like, can you tell me more about what happened? Like, Teg is kind of like the main character of book 5, and then we're not shown like how he dies. Yeah. And also in the first book, the attack on the sieges on the south of Arrakis, where Paul's first child died. And then a lot of the things that happen like after Paul joins the Fremen, where like he starts working with the smugglers, and that's all off screen. I don't know, I'm okay with off screening battles and other things, because that's not the point of the story, but at least like giving a peek into certain things, or at least after the fact giving a more detailed explanation of what happened. Yeah, I really didn't like that.
I didn't know it bothered you that much. I thought I was more bothered by this. I'm still kind of on the edge. At some points I kind of like it, but overall I don't like it. I agree. I still feel like at some point I'll be an old man and I'll read the 6th book again, and I think I'll like this, but I don't know. I don't know them there yet. So my 3rd is the Telaxu never being used and just dying in book 5, and also being depicted as religious fanatics. It's kind of doesn't fit my imagination. Like they never talked about them much, and when they became like religious, I don't buy it somehow. I don't know.
No, I agree. I was debating internally whether I wanted to put this on my worst list, where the other factions are not really explored or used. Talk about the Tleilaxu, but we know even less about the Ixians. We never really have a character for the guild other than Edric, but it's never really shown. We don't know anything about exactly what they want, exactly how they are, what they value. They're just like, oh yeah, we are the guild, we want power, we need spies. That's it.
Yeah, I guess if they said less about the Tleilaxu, I would be happier. Like, it really bothered me in the the fifth book. I was so happy about Waff and all the stuff going on, and then like halfway through, it like switched to being the worst. I was like, Waff is like a wuss. He doesn't even have any power anymore. Now he's like a religious idiot, and then he died, and he got his both arms broken, and they just drag him through the desert. And then next book, they all died, and we never talk about it ever again. Damn it! That was my favorite thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. My number 2, it's kind of similar, is what did the honored mattress want? I mean, I'm sure like we can give an answer to this. It just felt like we got this new faction and we didn't really get to know too much about it until it was pretty late and they were defeated or close to defeated. What were they running from? What was their end goal? Because like the only thing we know is they had a strong army somehow and they controlled people by imprinting them. Okay, how does it work with women, for example? How does it work with
it's all
different situations? I don't know.
I had the exact same feeling, and I would have put it on this list, but you told me otherwise when we talked about it in our recording, and that was that the book is designed to make you feel like we don't know, and it's only from the perspective of the characters who are on the other side, and that's why it's not on my list. But otherwise, I would agree.
I still agree with the point I made, but I also think like it would have been nice to get some clarity at some point. Like it's good to have like that kind of fresh perspective, but. Yeah,
we could imagine that it happened in book. That didn't happen.
Okay.
I guess. So, what is it, number 2 now?
Yes.
So, can you guess my number 2?
Your number 2?
Or 1 or 2. I think you can guess it.
Wow. I mean, I was sure that like Leto's worm armor was there, but
doesn't bother me nearly as much as this. And you know what is it?
Yeah. Of course, it's Teg becoming the flesh.
Yes. Correct.
That's number 2?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
It was way too unnecessary and way too fast.
He was way too fast. Yeah, I agree. It was way too fast.
Pun intended, and way too unjustified. For no reason. No genetic wizard Hatterack. It's just a random guy. There's no point to this. If he can do it, other people surely would have done it too. Like there is nothing special about him.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Like why him? Like give me something.
Okay. All right. Number 1. For me is confusion. So, especially in book 2 and book 3, I would say especially in book 3, like Jakurutu and the legend, and like is this Jakurutu? Are these the smugglers? Or like what is happening? Who are these people? Like, do they actually want to kill Leto? Are they working with Jessica? Like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the clearest example, but I'm sure there are many more where sometimes things are explained in a way that are just so confusing and convoluted, it just becomes like a puzzle, and not in a good way. Like, it's not like a mystery story where that's the fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's overdone. I agree. Majority, kind of like almost the majority of these books feel like a puzzle. You have to kind of like really examine, like especially the second book, like you talked about, you have to kind of put it together yourself and you have to like really think about it.
Yeah.
But it can be overdone, and it is at parts. So I agree.
Yeah.
So my number 1 worst thing about the whole series is this fucking capsule that Saddle has with all the famous characters being resurrected.
Okay, I agree. No, I agree. That's super dumb, but
it's like the worst thing that could have happened to
I
Dune.
just tend to ignore that it's there because I always think like, at the end of the day, who cares? Like, it's not used in the first 6 books. But I agree. Like, the fact that it exists, like, would have been pretty awful in a possible 7th book.
I feel like it would have been definitely used and brought down the series even lower. Like, as far as like the novelty goes.
I agree.
If you know what I mean. Like every book feels very novel, and this would have killed it.
I completely agree.
like why bring these people back? Why is even Saitel there? Like, that bothers me the most. Saitel with his capsule can fuck off. I don't want him there.
I agree.
He didn't even do anything.
Well, he was kind of like kept captured and tried to speak with the Duncan.
Which is like, it hurts me so much more because it's one of my favorite things right from the second book, and then it's like, why you even do this? Like, what is the point? There's no point to this. It's like, okay. So next, let's move on to
random nonsense.
Random nonsense.
This is not the same. These are not the worst things. It could be. We said these are the best, just not in a serious way.
Okay. So are these, just to be clear, things that shock you or things that you are like, why? Is this?
I guess the way I made this is especially things that are funny. But like more than funny, it's just like, wow, this really happened? Like this is really here?
Okay. Well, then I should delete my list and put all stuff from book 4 now.
That's fine. So, okay, my number 5 is, I'm kind of cheating because it's 3 different things, but it's all by Leto. So, one is the fact that he calls the river Idaho.
Oh, yeah.
So, he calls the river like Duncan, but he still has Duncan, and he calls Duncan the Duncan, and he has a tower which is insanely tall for no reason.
That's only like 5 points. But yes, I have to think. But these are like my favorite things. This is not like the what the hell thing.
Like,
so I misunderstood this list.
So funny. Like to me, it's just so funny. I mean, there are so many things. I guess my 5th one is just like all the things that Leto does that are just like he's doing this clearly intentionally and just like because he's bored. Like when they're going to the festival city and he's riding his cart and everyone else has to walk. But he goes a little bit too fast, so they have to jog.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. That's why I love this book. This is so much of that.
Yeah.
So if that's your 5, then I have to say that my 5th is the moment Leto falls asleep while he's being assassinated.
Yeah. By the way, honorable mention, since we're talking about this and it's all related, Duncan stripping down during a battle to prove he's the real Duncan.
That's exactly another one. I would, yeah. That's probably my point 4, but I have this list different. So these are like my favorite things.
Stripping down, so this is number 4. It's Alia training while she's naked, and Paul and Stilgar seeing her, and Paul thinking like, maybe I should do something. And I just can't this was already so funny for me. And just so weird, like, why is this here? Like, what? Why is she training naked? And why is Paul thinking about, like, sleeping with her? But it became even funnier and even, like, weirder by listening to Christina describing this.
Yep.
So please go back and listen to the episode and just listen to Christina describe this. It's incredibly funny. No, this is Dune Messiah. Yeah.
Please check out Dune Messiah.
And I would add, sorry, to this point is in general, like people being horny. You know, Alia, and then in the last book, Shiana, and then, well, Duncan, of course, and V. And like people, everyone's like the fish speakers. Like everyone is horny.
Yeah, I could. There's so many of these points. I could say like Duncan waking up resurrected, having a bunch of sex in the spa, and then it's like they went to breed with you, and Duncan's like, what? I shouldn't have sex with that. That's like one of my favorite things. It's not on this.
Okay.
So I'll change it up a little bit. So I'll say maybe this with the spa.
That's number 4?
Probably
okay.
Number 4 for me. Yeah, because I was laughing so much at that. If you judge it by how amused you were, Duncan being innocent about having sex with those fish speakers constantly is my number 4.
Okay, number 3 is Lucilla turns into a prostitute.
It's the same. I also have it as number 3.
I have forgotten how great that part was, and then you reminded me when we were talking about this, we were doing book 5. It's just like, what? Yeah. Why? Why did this happen? And then why is she bragging about these things? And why is Smiley naked?
307 levels of orgasmic pleasure or something, and then vaginal temperature and pulsing, and then what I have on the list as number 3 is what happens directly after this is Smiley with his erection, the laughing.
That to me that's all part of it. Like the whole scene, and then how they go to the spaceport, and then whatever happens with Duncan and Burbella.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Okay, number 2.
So number 2.
Of course, one of the all-time best. Can you guess? You can guess my number 2 and my number 1 easily.
Well, it's gonna be. Well, I don't know.
Number 2, of course. it's Duncan climbing the cliff.
Well, that thing I didn't put here because that's that's one of the best moments. That's not like why.
But this is just random nonsense. Like, just because it's
okay.
Why is he climbing this cliff? Like, there is no way to go on top of this. Like, they only have to climb. Like, there's no technology to go. Like, what is happening? Why is he climbing this cliff? And why is he like, I've just been humiliated and told that I'm an old model. So, fuck this up. I'm going to climb this cliff. Like, can you imagine if this is a movie? And it's just like this epic scene of just climbing.
Yep.
Climbing a cliff.
I put it on the other list that's gonna come up after this, but yeah. Absolutely, this should be number one, of course, but
No, this is for me now. Yeah, it's number 2.
I like it too much, and I think it serves a purpose, so it's not that nonsensical. I think it was talking about symbolism. There was a point to relieve tension in some kind of way, and I think it was very clever how this scene relieved tension from the reader while everything was like going to hell and everybody was going to die, and then there was this scene in the middle of it. It was genius to like relieve tension by this climax. So that's why I don't think it's completely random. I think it was very intentional by Frank Herbert to like have this release of like amusing, like what the hell is happening, just to let go of the tension at the end of the book. But okay.
What is your number 2?
Tag pooping all over the place.
Yeah, that I regret not putting that. But yeah, that's also great. Yeah. Okay, number 1, of course. It's the tigers.
Okay.
It's just like the most random thing. Like, this is why I still can't explain myself like how he could think.
That's funny that all these bad things are in your favorite book.
I know. But it's just, how could any of this work? How could Frank Herbert think, I need to make an assassination plot. I guess I'll put some tigers. They will be trained to kill 2 children who look like Leto and Ganima. Like, what? How does this even work?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I just tried not to have these lists overlap. That's why I don't have it here, because I already have it as the worst. But yeah, my number 1 is Space Juice.
Space Juice?
Yeah, so I feel like I misunderstood this list, because Space Juice is not as ridiculous, but it's just so much out of place. Okay. I had to give it number 1.
Fair enough.
Should have been the Tigers. Yeah, I agree with you.
That's why this was a must do. I had to talk about those 2 things.
Yes. Okay, so we have the quotes and Duncan left.
I would start with Duncan. Let's finish with the list, and then we can finish with quotes.
So, top 5, Duncan being the hunkiest of hunky boys. Okay, so number 5.
My 5th one is, don't grieve and don't fall for a single target. So here's what I mean. For example.
Wow, very deep.
So when Wee dies, he like, he was kind of disappointed. Not disappointed, he was really upset, right? He was really angry. He cut, like, what's her name into.
Yeah.
But then, immediately after that, it was like, well, Siona, we've been resisting this. I guess it's time.
Let's go.
I guess it's time. I know, like, my previous lady just died. I was very angry about it, but nature calls.
I love how you have this an actual like tip from like a Metropolitan, what is it? Like Metropolitan magazine or something. Like how to get living. What did you say? Don't focus on one target.
Don't grieve and don't fall for a single target.
Oh my god, that's so bad. Okay.
Yeah, and this is also like later. He has Lucilla and Murbella. He couldn't get Lucilla, so immediately falls on his feet with Murbella. So.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm gonna try to transform my list into tips like you did, because it's ridiculous. And funnily enough, this is exactly what happens after this. After your point 5, it's exactly my point 5. And the tip is spread your seed as widely as possible, aka have millions of children with Siona and be the father of the universe.
He only has 7 children with Siona, like the 7 daughters. Okay. Like he has like thousands with, I guess, the fish dancers, fish speakers. So, yeah, fair. Okay, number 4. Go for the daughter or descendant when you can't get the mother or ancestor. So,
oh my God.
Duncan was very, very clearly infatuated with Jessica. And he even made like a half-assed attempt at her, like in the first book when he was drunk.
Yeah.
By the way, that was like a completely other random scene that just happened. Didn't really serve any purpose other than showing that Duncan was a hunky boy, and Jessica was the only woman to actually say no to the hunky boy. But yeah, so he could never have Jessica. So first he marries her daughter, Alia, and then he gets the descendant, who's Siona.
Oh my god, this is turning into like the dirtiest list of like resurrection hunky boy tricks in the history of.
So
That's so bad.
That's how you do it.
Okay, so my tip number 4 is ascend to the next level and have other men have sex for you. AKA Duncan training the whole army of men to imprint women for him.
That's so true. Yes.
So bad.
That's that's next step. I didn't think about that. Okay, my number 3 is be a sex monster. And what I mean is, like, of course in book 5, he enslaves Murbella to himself. Just with the he doesn't know the 300 techniques of whatever. I don't know what he knows how to do, but he knows how to do something, and that something works really well.
Yeah, so my number 3 is, do you have a shot at having sex with the bride of a god? You'd better take it.
Yeah.
AKA having sex with Hinori at the first time
After
possible.
Moreno literally telling you, please just don't do this. Please. Like, that's literally the only thing you don't have to do. You can do whatever else. Duncan, you can have any other woman. It's all fine. Please.
Yep.
Just not her.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess the other advice is like, never take a no. Not never take a no for an answer, but never take a target off the list.
Never give no as an answer.
Okay, my number 2 is, we already talked about this, but is climb cliffs. Learn how to climb cliffs.
How is this not number 1? What the hell? I'm very curious now. What number 1?
What's your number 2?
Sorry, what's the tip? Climb the rope and be the sexiest doing it?
I just learned how to climb cliffs really well.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
This one is more subtle. My number 2 is your number 3. And I'm gonna say, are you unable to deal with the sheer amount of pleasure?
Yeah.
Give it back even stronger. Having sex with Murbella and being like the ultimate imprint.
Okay. Number 1, I guess your number 1 is the cliff.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. My number 1 is kind of a cheat, but it's be Duncan. Here's what I mean. So, how did Duncan seduce the fish speakers? He doesn't. He's just Duncan. How did Duncan seduce V? He doesn't. He's just there and falls for him. How did he seduce Siona or Lucilla? Or how did he seduce, like, even Alia? It does nothing. He's just there. He's just Duncan. And everyone is just like, can't resist. It's the Duncan. Can't say no.
Even I didn't resist. He got on my list of best stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So just be Duncan. That's my advice. Be Duncan.
Don't do as Duncan would do. Be Duncan.
Yeah. Don't try to be like Duncan. Just be Duncan.
Exactly.
So that's my biggest advice. I guess be Jason Momoa.
Climb more mountains. I think it's the best for me, but if we put it as a list of tips, I think yours is much better.
Thank you.
Listen to Paulo. He went at giving tips as Duncan. Amazing. That was way too funnier than I expected. Way too more clever than I expected from you, this
Thank
list. Okay, so that's all our lists. And the other one, I also have like 3 quotes as the best quotes, but we can just say whichever, and we have too many. So
yeah.
I guess for the listeners, you can just tune out and just leave us discussing Dune quotes until we die, because that's basically the fate of our podcast. Subscribe to whatever Dune quote Twitter account we follow. I don't know what that is called.
Yeah, Dune quote boat.
Yeah. I don't know how that wasn't killed, because our bot was killed. I'm so jealous. They're still going.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do like an honorable mention, some quote, and then only the 3. What do you think?
Okay, wow.
Or do you want to do more? Do you want to do 5?
I mean, yeah, let's do 3. But do you have 3? Do you have many?
No, I have 3 that I just picked because I thought I had to, and then
Please
I have like many.
Tell me the 3 so I can choose something that is different. Tell me the whole 3, and then I will say 3.
Okay. So most of these I already talked about, so I'll just reference some of these. So the third best for me is the very ending of the sixth book, and what I talked about is like a theme throughout the books, how Mentats cultivate naivety and how they have to look at things with a fresh mind. So the quote is, Mentats cultivated naivete, they say, not naivety, I'm not sure to pronounce this, so excuse me.
Naivete.
Thinking you knew something was a sure way to blind yourself. It was not growing up that slowly applied breaks to learning, but it was an accumulation of things I know. Knowing was a barrier which prevented learning. So I think the freshness to look at things fresh and never accept that you already know something and ignore that you could be better is one of my favorite quotes and concepts and ideas.
Agreed.
Number 2, I also talked about, this is from book 5, the whole sentiment about people needing something more in life than just happiness and possessions and joy. The Bene Gesserit say, people always want something more than immediate joy or that deeper sense called happiness. This is one of the secrets by which we shape the fulfillment of our designs. The something more assumes amplified power with people who cannot give it or name it, or who, most often the case, do not even suspect its existence. Most people only react unconsciously to such hidden forces. Thus we have only to call a calculated something more into existence, define it and give it shape. Then people will follow. I like this so much because it's very, very true to me personally, and I think very, very clearly you can see with people if they have something like this in their life or not. And also it's super evil with the last line, then people will follow. This is the most evil way to control people by the Bene Gesserit. So that's like all packed in one. That's why I picked this as number 2.
Yeah.
And my number 1 all-time favorite quote from Dune, I thought about this very hard. And of course it's from the 4th book.
Okay.
For what do you hunger, Lord? Moneo ventured. For a humankind which can make truly long-term decisions. Do you know the key to that ability, Moneo? You have said it many times, Lord. It is the ability to change your mind. I think this is my all-time philosophy of my whole life. I've been telling people this my whole life, even before I read Dune. There was also a quote I discarded from this list that said, if you learn something that you knew deep in yourself, you already knew, then it was good learning. So I already know this, and I read it again in Dune. I keep telling everybody, and I think people should really do this. The only thing I want from people in their life is to be able to change their opinion.
It's to be like Duncan.
People who can change their opinion and change their mind are so much better off and so much better people than anybody else. Like, for God's sake, stop being stubborn and accept that things change. That's all I want from life. Like, just see that people and things and everything changes. Nothing is constant. And if you refuse to change your mind ever, you're just being an idiot and you're doing everything wrong. So please, listen to Leto, God, Worm, Emperor, and change your mind, Moneo. That's my number 1.
Okay. It's very interesting. So, the way I thought about this, I have way too many quotes. I couldn't really put it down to 3, but I guess the way I did it is in a way similar to yours, but instead of choosing a single quote, I tried to divide them just by topic. The first type, just to connect to what you just said, so the first group of quotes that are my favorite are about change and about kind of like the refusal to accept change and the risks sometimes of accepting change, which is one of the biggest topics throughout the whole series. I'll read a few of my favorite quotes about that. I don't remember who says this or
That's
which
okay.
book. So one is, I do not have to be what my father was. I do not have to obey my father's rules or even believe everything he believed. It is my strength as a human that I can make my own choices of what to believe and what not to believe, of what to be and what not to be. Similar, I mentioned this before, is there's little that bureaucrats hate more than innovation, especially innovation that produces better results than old routines.
Yeah, that's the best one.
And then the last one in this sense is how tempting it is to raise high walls and keep out change, brought here in our own self-fulfilled comfort.
Absolutely agree. I love all of these, and the one I put as number 1 only like references this in one quote. That's
sort of like that.
what I was trying to force myself to pick one.
Yeah, but there are so many. The second one is more about power and the fallacy of power. So one is power attracts pathological personalities. It is not that power corrupts, but that it is magnetic to the corruptible. Power attracts the corruptible. Suspect any who seek it.
Sorry to interrupt, but is this really the first time it was said? Like, I feel like this has been said so much, and is this really the original, like, from Dune? Or did somebody else say it too?
I don't know. It is in Dune.
I feel like this is something that was in The Prince, like Machiavelli or something, but I don't know. Definitely very, very famous quote.
Yeah, I think so. Then, we should grant power over our affairs only to those who are reluctant to hold it, and then only under conditions that increase the reluctance.
Also, like this one.
And the last one, which is my favorite, by your best friend, Leto. All rebels are closet aristocrats. That's why I can convert them so easily.
Yeah.
So in general, like, I like this idea of people being the problem, not power being the problem. And I especially like the last one about rebels being closet aristocrats, because so many times it's so easy to say, oh, just, if there's something bad, just have a revolution. Just change everything. And in the previous set, we talked about the importance of change. In this case, like, just change everything. But the problem is that something that I wish, like, it could be printed, like, in every high school in Italy, like on the wall, is every revolution always brings dictatorship. There hasn't been, like, any exception in history. So, yeah, this exemplifies that so much that, people want to rebel because they want to change, but they want to change because they want power. Actually, like the leaders, They actually want power, and because it's not that power will corrupt them and they will become dictators after they come to power. It's just that they want that power because they are tyrants at their heart.
Absolutely agree. This is also, I wrote this quote. I have it as like maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I also wrote one that's about the same topic, and it says, when I am weaker than you, I ask you for freedom. Because that is according to your principles. When I am stronger than you, I take away your freedom because that is according to my principles. So I feel like that's the same theme, and that's also one of my all-time favorites.
I agree.
Yeah.
I also have one. This is kind of like on the side. This is just because it's funny because we live in Japan. Codes and manuals create pattern behavior. All pattern behavior tends to go unquestioned, gathering this creative momentum. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, this is also one of my super favorite quotes I talked about in our previous episode.
But I want to finish with one which is, strangely enough for me, is very positive. And I think so. I think especially in the very first Dune book, it kind of gets lost. I don't know if this one is from which book it is, but theme that is lost after the first book and is taken back in the 6th book is about planetology and like life on planets and how life shapes not just the environment but like also the future and everything. And the quote is, all life is in the service of life.
I remember.
Which is kind of strange, but I think it's a quote full of hope, which it's not necessarily the case in Dune usually. Like there is the opposite where it's like Leto in particular, I think, talks about how everyone has a violent past, and if you go back long enough in your family tree, you'll find murderers, you'll find like all sorts of bad people, and we all have the blood of evil people in us. You just need to go deep enough. But on the other side, this is very hopeful in the sense that it kind of reminds you that if you take life beyond like just humans and beyond just the present, it is something that has started beginning of life on Earth, and that will continue to perpetrate itself almost to eternity, which is a beautiful concept.
Yeah, I'm very, very surprised you picked this, and I absolutely agree. It's a very beautiful thing to say. I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that you would not have the last quote as death is the only constant.
No. But yeah, as an ending, I would say please read JoJo and Attack on Titans.
You have persuaded me. I've been looking at some information about the Infinite Jest, so I really want to read it now.
Please read Infinite Jest. You will hate me so much after the first 50 pages.
If I take it slow, I think I won't hate it. It's just
you will never finish if you take it slow.
Well,
we'll talk about it. I'll teach you how to read it.
Maybe that's a fitting episode 100.
No, episode 100
instead of being depressed.
Journey to the End of the Dark.
So thank you everybody for listening to us. This has been 8 episodes about Dune. Please leave us your favorite quotes. Please suggest us another series, your favorite sci-fi, fantasy, any book series. I love doing these series with you and talking about it as a whole. It's something I always want to do. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that you stuck with me throughout
No, thank
so
you.
much time. So I think we recorded at least 10 hours of Dune stuff.
Yeah, I would say more.
Yeah, I mean, we have released about 10 hours of Dune stuff. I've recorded like 20 hours of Dune stuff.
We need to, just count how many times we talked about Duncan being a hunky boy. That would be pretty interesting.
So this is officially us giving it a break. I'm not gonna say never talk about Dune again, but for a long while, I think we won't
Only
touch
Dune
these
references.
books. So you can rest assured, listeners, that we won't drown you in more sand and worms anymore. Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode.